Population growth and poverty. Population growth and poverty are strongly linked with each other. Population affects poverty in many ways. In this blog post, we will look at how the population affects poverty and what needs to be done to solve poverty. We'll explore the effects of people on poverty and some solutions that different countries worldwide have implemented. Population growth and poverty in the developing world. As the world's population continues to grow, so does its poverty. Though many factors contribute to this issue, one of the largest is that as populations increase in size and density, there are growing economic pressures put on a country's resources, leading to increased levels of unemployment and higher rates of crime. Furthermore, as more people compete for these limited resources, it becomes increasingly difficult for those at lower socioeconomic strata than their counterparts, especially when you consider how wages decrease with an increase in supply, fewer jobs. Families in developing countries see a decline in economic security and living standards as they make less than $2 per day due largely from an increase in unemployment or underemployment, which is often caused by mechanization. The poorest people who live on about $1 per day will be affected most severely by population growth because their livelihoods depend heavily on agriculture-based work for income such as farming or fishing while also providing food for themselves and others within their community. Population growth and poverty. Population growth and poverty in the developed world. Some economists say that the number of people in developed countries is too high, and their resources are dwindling. There has been an increase in poverty rates due to this, but there may be a solution: birth control. Birth control would reduce the number of people who need jobs, leading to more job opportunities for those already living in these communities. The notion that high population areas have fewer opportunities for economic growth than lower populated areas could partially account for why more people in poorer regions live below or near the poverty level when contrasted next to those who reside in richer places such as New York City, which has 8 million inhabitants living within its boundaries versus Los Angeles County where over 10 million call home, United States Census Bureau. This would make sense considering substandard conditions like food scarcity. Population growth and poverty in the rural areas. Poverty is a problem that has always been present in rural areas, but it's getting worse. The population growth of these regions has led to an increase in poverty levels and a lack of access to basic needs such as food or water. The effects of population on poverty in rural areas have yet to be determined, but a correlation between size and income is likely. For instance, there are many more people living in developed countries per square mile than developing ones because they have higher incomes overall. This has been shown by statistics that show that as some regions become wealthier, it leads other places to decline economically due to migration patterns or trade agreements with those who already enjoy financial stability, thus proving an inverse relationship between wealth and density level nationwide. Population growth and poverty in the urban areas. What's going on in the inner city? Is a common question. Why are the majority of people living below the poverty line? The answer can rather be found in population growth and shrinking job markets. As more immigrants come to America, they often find themselves unable to afford housing or work as their economic opportunities continue dwindling with time spent unemployed while waiting for green cards or citizenship papers that never arrive. These factors contribute greatly towards an increase of poor urban residents who may not speak English fluently enough to get better jobs because there isn't any help being offered by government agencies like career counseling centers which would provide them much needed assistance finding employment. Population growth and poverty in Asia. Poverty and economic inequality is a major issue in Asia, but it's not the only challenge. The population of Asians has grown by an average of 10% per year since 1981. Though this level of growth may seem unimportant at first glance, according to UN data from 2015, there are 1 billion more people living in poverty than before because food prices have been driven up with inflation rates as high as 9%. There are even reports that China will be one country short on arable land for food production by 2030 if current trends continue without reformations or solutions proposed. In addition to increasing numbers causing increased levels of crime, such poverty creates uncertainty which leads many refugees around the world into lives they could never have imagined otherwise. As populations in Asia continue to grow, poverty rates are also increasing. The most affected group is children who have the highest risk of becoming impoverished before turning 18 years old and consequently being trapped into a cycle that they cannot escape from. Population growth and poverty in Europe. The continent of Europe is currently in a period of rapid population growth. As the populations grow, so does their demand for resources and housing accommodation, which has led to an increase in poverty rates across many countries on the European peninsula. The disparity between rich and poor families when it comes to accessibility, healthcare coverage, education opportunities are just some ways that classism manifests itself most prominently here, as well-off individuals take advantage of those who lack opportunity or have been born into lower income levels due to circumstance rather than choice. With more people living below the poverty line each year, there's less time left before economic instability becomes widespread throughout all parts of society. Population growth and poverty in America. The United States is both a world power and the third most populous country in it. With over 300 million people. However, with this massive population also come many social ills such as poverty and pollution, which affect all citizens of our great country equally regardless of race or ethnicity. For instance, 1 out of 5 children live below the poverty line. That's about 15 million kids. How can we help? The American dream may be dead, but poverty is still alive and well. Researchers at the Brookings Institution have found that there are more than 46 million people living below the U.S. poverty line in America today, a number that has climbed by 14% since 2007 thanks to a combination of unemployment rates as high as 50%. Population growth and poverty in Africa. In the last decade, Africa has experienced a population boom. It is predicted that by 2050 there will be over 4 billion people living in Africa, an increase of 1.5 billion from current figures. With this influx comes increased poverty and unemployment rates, as well as hunger levels, which are seen at record highs for many regions across the continent already dealing with their own economic stagnation or decline. Africa is a continent that has been plagued by many economic and political problems. One of the most controversial issues in recent years, however, revolves around how population growth affects poverty levels on the continent. However, this debate over whether Africa's growing populations are actually leading to an increased incidence of poverty or not persists for one reason: there have never really been any studies done about it. There needs to be more research into these effects so we can come up with clearer answers as soon as possible. Otherwise, African countries will continue struggling even under their current conditions due largely to continuing increases in population size. Population growth effects on jobs and wages. The population is constantly increasing. More people are being born, and more jobs will be required for them to have a career in the future. As time moves on, there will eventually come an imbalance between what employers need from their employees and how much they can pay these employees due to limited resources of money or other materials that would benefit, such as food and water sources, which could contribute towards increased wages per hour if not higher prices at restaurants where you purchase your lunch every day, because it's becoming harder for companies like McDonald's, who sell cheap fast food hamburger meals with fries costing around $6 to $7 but producing enough revenue each year so this company still has funds available to invest in new projects while hiring thousands of workers across America, requesting billions worth. Population growth effects on the labor market. The effect of population growth on the labor market is substantial. With an increase in people, there will be a subsequent rise in production and consumption rates that can lead to both shortages or surpluses depending on if they are managed properly. The creation of jobs has always been challenging during periods when populations grow rapidly because new workers consume resources faster than older ones retire from their positions. This causes some types of industries to suffer for lack of qualified employees while others become overflowing with skilled laborers looking for work. Effect of population on child labor. It is a well-known fact that the population of any given country has an effect on everything from child labor and crime rates to quality of education. For example, India's high birth rate combined with its low life expectancy results in more children entering into the workforce at young ages for economic reasons than would be expected by other countries around this same region. One could argue that because these kids are forced onto their own before they have had enough time or resources to prepare themselves financially, not even considering other factors such as safety, it can lead them down some less successful paths both economically and personally, since most people find success when they're able to go about fulfilling goals gradually rather than being rushed due primarily to societal pressures like those faced by many Asian families. Population growth and homelessness. In recent years, the world population has increased rapidly, causing a significant rise in homelessness. As the population of a city increases, so does its homeless population. When you think about it, this makes sense because as more people flood into cities, there are fewer affordable homes to go around. The housing market gets saturated, meaning that even if someone has enough money for rent, they may not be able to find an apartment or home with vacancies available. This is where homelessness comes into play, which affects many aspects of society, including education and crime rates, among other things like poverty levels.